Well, I'm delighted today to be speaking to Rachael Reynolds and Anthony Partridge from Ogier. Welcome to you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Pleasure
David.
to be here.
So Ogier are the gold sponsor of our New York dinner tomorrow night at the Yale Club. Are you looking forward to the event?
So looking forward to it. And I love New York anyway, but coming here and having the opportunity to invite some of our key clients along, key intermediaries, getting to meet new people, and such a lovely venue. We're very much looking forward to it.
Fantastic. Anthony, you a regular visitor to New York?
Yeah, it's great to be back in New York, actually. I've been here 3 times this year, I think, but just really grateful to be seeing our intermediaries, our clients, catching up with familiar faces, but also meeting new people that are coming to the dinner tomorrow night, which is really great to see.
Fantastic. And Rachael, many of our audience, our professional members, will know the Ogier name and brand, but perhaps you could give us some of the key highlights of the practice as it stands today.
Yeah, delighted that we are now the largest offshore private client offering. We're an offshore and international firm, no longer just offshore. We're in 12 different jurisdictions. We have 1,100 people globally. We span all time zones now, which means I think we are able to really offer that service that our private clients need. We're now in a very globalized world, aren't we? And our clients are international in every sense of the word. And it's really important that we're able to offer that seamless service. We run our business very much as an advisory group, both contentious and non-contentious. We work very closely together. And across jurisdictions, which means that we're very joined up. It's so common that any of the structures that we deal with will have a number of our jurisdictions involved, and we're of course able to offer a one-team service that allows clients to, no matter where you are in the world, you can get somebody on the phone at partner level who will be able to assist.
Are you seeing any particular parts of the world driving more work? I mean, from a lot of our members, Middle East is a key focus, some of the key markets, Saudi and UAE. I mean, how do you see it for global growth and opportunity for professional services?
Yes, I mean, I'd say I probably am evenly split between the European market, the Middle Eastern market, and North America at the moment. Some of my largest matters originate out of the Middle East, but the intermediaries will either be London or North America. The North American stuff at the moment is coming in terms of restructuring and sort of looking at their structures and looking at what they need going forward. The intergenerational aspect of this as we move on from the previous generation, which was quite set in their ways and where they were investing and what kind of vehicles they wanted. We're now seeing a very different sort of generation coming through.
The great wealth transfer, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. The philanthropy that's involved as well is a really new aspect of what we're seeing our clients really needing. Lots of input on the ESG side and the philanthropy side, and we're doing a lot more in that sort of arena as well.
Fantastic. And Anthony, you're going to open up the event tomorrow with a panel that's going to talk on Cayman and how it relates to the advisors and the practice that is here.
Yeah, that's right, David. I think that it'll be a really interesting panel tomorrow. We have myself talking about the Cayman option and looking at options to relocate to the Cayman Islands, what sort of structuring there will be. We have a Cayman trustee that will be talking as well. We have a real estate advisor in Cayman that will be talking, as well as US counsel that will be looking at it from the US aspects and US law aspects. So that's a perfect combination of all of the aspects that you would want in any sort of high net worth advisory, trust, estate planning matter coming to the Cayman Islands.
Are you noticing a pickup in relocation inquiries? Or is demand fairly, it's been set fair and steadily going last few years?
I think there's certainly more interest in Cayman, and there has been interest in a long time in terms of the jurisdiction, what it can offer, business opportunities. We have some of the most sophisticated trust laws, I think, certainly in the offshore world. People are paying attention to that. Being here in New York, it's such a global hub for advisors. We'll see that with our intermediaries here, but there's also a number of trust companies that are here in New York, which is why it's important for Cayman advisors to always come to New York, to keep in touch with people, So there's certainly a lot of interest in Cayman, for sure.
And I think what's come out in some of our discussions with our American intermediaries and clients is the recognition that what you get in Cayman in terms of the court
more certainty,
adjudicating or supervising the structures. And there are some jurisdictions where perhaps it's known to be a bit more hit and miss. With Cayman, we've got such an experienced judiciary and a group of practitioners that you were in safe hands. And so that seems to be well sort of acknowledged and recognised, and puts people more at ease at coming to Cayman for their structures than perhaps other jurisdictions.
And because there are strong synergies, aren't there? I mean, perhaps you could set out some of those synergies that you see between Cayman and the North America market.
Yeah, I think time zone being here and so close by, a lot of people want to be able to come to the Cayman Islands. Wherever their trust is structured, they want to be able to come, visit, and be with their trustees and with their
easy
advisors.
access is important, isn't it?
And I think being so accessible, and also we have a lot of people on island who have worked in the US, have worked in Europe, who end up in Cayman. And so in that sense, it's terribly accessible and familiar when people come over. And actually, the Cayman Islands is very similar to Miami. So I think a lot of Americans feel at home when they come.
And you often work with intermediaries here dealing with international wealth, non-US residents investing into the country, into real estate or owning US assets. I mean, what kind of clients do you find utilize Cayman structures or are instructed from here?
I mean, that really is global. So, I mean, I mentioned earlier the main jurisdictions, but also, of course, the Asian market, Eastern European market. I mean, actually, I couldn't even these days say it's one particular part of the globe. And all of those clients will feed through a major international centre. And so we will work very closely with the magic circle firms, both in New York and with London, where they are the primary relationship often, and they need the input for whichever offshore jurisdiction that we represent, whether it's the Channel Islands or it's in the Caribbean islands, or we've also, of course, got our time zone presence in Asia as well. So between those sort of three key hubs, we can make sure that the clients have got proper access to first-hand experienced legal advisors.
Fantastic. And Anthony, you were just down in Miami last week at STEP Miami.
It
looked a fantastic conference. I mean, perhaps share a little bit about what
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's no secret that Miami is really the capital of Latin America. And the STEP Summit was over a 3-day period this year, completely extended, lots of networking opportunities. The actual summit was on the Friday. I moderated a panel on LATAM updates for Brazil, Mexico and Colombia, which was a really, really good opportunity to hear of everything that's going on in those jurisdictions at the moment. There was 400 people at the summit, so really, really packed agenda. People from all over Latin America, all over the world actually, that came to Miami.
There's a very strong offering for Brazil, isn't there, out of Cayman on structuring?
For sure. There is a really big market for Brazilian high net worth families, and also the funds industry as well, because traditionally Brazil hasn't been particularly friendly to trusts. Their regulators and their tax advisors down there have done a lot of structuring through corporations and family funds. I think that could be changing. There is a lot of kind of talk. They have a new president in Brazil. There's been a lot of changes in the air. So I think it's really watch this space to see whether or not I think that could change in terms of the trust industry and for different advisors in Brazil, and how that affects Cayman, the North American market as well. But what I can say is I think there'll be lots of new opportunities, particularly for LATAM.
Very interesting. And more globally, I mean, Rachael mentioned about the Great Wealth Transfer, new types of clients coming through, different priorities. I mean, is this something you're also seeing?
Yeah, no, definitely. I am seeing it. And one of the things that we were talking about is bigger structures coming. The quality of the structuring and the advice that's needed, I think, is much greater now. I mean, one of the trends that we've really been seeing, I think, over the last 12 months is is an increase in private trust companies, and inquiries for those being set up. The families are much larger. There's a lot more wealth. That intergenerational transfer of wealth is really there, and patriarchs and matriarchs really thinking about, well, how do we get this to the next generation? What are the thoughts and opportunities there of the next generation, and how do we put that structuring in place now? So these are really important and key topics that I think are going to become more important in the near future.
And the next generation, often educated abroad outside perhaps the home country where wealth was made, it inevitably throws in complexity, doesn't it? If next generation ends up in the US, UK or other jurisdictions.
That's correct. And you'll find that the next generation, or even going on to further generations, they're not just going to be in the home country. They could be in North America, they could be cross-border, they could be anywhere. So that's the nature of globally mobile families, which makes our job as planners complex, but very, very exciting.
Thank you. And Rachel, on the contentious side, I mean, what are some of the key trends or things you're talking to clients and contacts about?
Well, actually, I mean, this mobilisation and globalisation has meant that we've seen a lot of restructuring going on, and we have to be fluid, we have to be flexible, and our structures have to be flexible. And in Cayman, one of the prevalent themes that's been going through the courts is seeking the Cayman court's assistance under its inherent supervisory jurisdiction to help families to adapt with the movements that they're going through. And the Cayman courts have shown themselves really willing to assist. So a lot of what I do actually is non-contentious, but through the courts. And so whether it's a restructuring where we're needing the court to sort of allow that sort of a variation, a change, an adaptation, and even the Star Trust structure, which is sort of a purpose trust, which has a separate regime. We had the first matter where we were asking the court to effect a variation due to a change of circumstances in the family, which wasn't foreseen at the time the trust was settled, but was absolutely necessary because of the development of where the family was and where people were moving to. And that was a several $billion structure that needed the assistance of the court, and the court was willing to give it under the right circumstances. And so that, and also sort of the obviously through the COVID years, the focus of business has had to change, and these structures have had to be flexible and adapt to the movements and everything. So we've done an awful lot of trying to make sure that the structure works for what the families need and what the underlying businesses are coping with in terms of the challenges that they're facing. And the Cayman courts are really helpful in doing that. I mean, another theme that I think we've seen a lot of is where proceedings are going on abroad, and a trustee might be joined to those proceedings, and it might involve a structure, and it's really important that we get a very early Cayman court assistance in the matter to sort of preempt any orders that might be made abroad. And I mean, the real key there is getting into court early in Cayman, getting the Cayman court to issue its sort of directions or declarations, which can then be taken to whichever jurisdiction is grappling with these things, and sort of saying, well, you know, if it's an assistance, this is what the Cayman court is saying about this structure. And so we're sort of on the front foot, just trying to assist a foreign court who's trying to grapple with matters of Cayman law, and saying, well, this is what the Cayman court would say. And often the foreign court will really be grateful for the assistance and really look to the Cayman court to be telling it what the position is.
Okay, thank you. And Anthony, are you seeing also the restructuring, modernisation of structures that can be triggered by a variety of things? But I think this seems to be a theme that a lot of advisors are talking about.
So interesting you're asking that question, because just the other day we really had quite a barrage of questions from a family where there were several members of the family who were wanting advice in relation to the modernisation of their trust structures, where the modernisation can't be coming too late, really, because there is a patriarch that's passed away. Gen 2 is very interested in trying to change things for the future, where there is now more females versus males in the family, but all of the main key players in the trust structuring seem to be held by males. And we need to get into the weeds of this, but going on into the future, how do we amend that trust? How do we modernize it when there might be slight complications within the primary documents, the trust deed, underlying documents that might kind of make it difficult to amend going forward. And that's a classic case where Rachael and I probably interact with each other, and our practices are so interwoven, because if there isn't an option within the trust structure itself, then that could be a case of involving the court, where you see it's not anything that's contentious, it's more a family trying to work together in harmony for something that's so old and needs to be modernised.
And the amount of saving of stress, cost, time that could have been done by having the thinking happen at the beginning.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
What we've, of course, learned through our contentious matters has really fed into how we're structuring the whole thing really now.
Yeah.
And had we just had a particular power under a trust, we know that this is what saves a family all of that stress and anxiety later. And that's what we're really about, is trying to avoid these things going to court, avoid the awful family acrimony that can be caused by an absence of a very simple provision in a trust deed.
Because governance and good governance is something that a lot of the onshore lawyers and trustees are talking about and trying to table with clients, and it requires a collaborative approach, doesn't it, in order to get that right, work closely with the family, but then to implement, you need a team there.
It does require a collaborative approach, and our intermediaries, you'll find, where they're the project managers, they are very good at this, and you'll find lots of themes there where there'll be an onshore law firm who manages the primary relationship with the client, and they're the ones doing the family constitutions and looking at how the governance in certain structures is actually working, and how we can comply with that more. But then you'll actually see, well, where are these trust structures governed? And that could be Cayman or one of our other trust jurisdictions. But it all feeds in together, doesn't it? And it all needs to come together, and that's where we work beautifully with our onshore intermediaries, and we work together for the good of the client.
And I think, the family dynamics is also, in the emotional side, is getting played in more now to the advice. You see TV shows like Succession, where you see writ large the different difficulties with families. And I've seen so many commentary pieces with advisors saying, this is what I try and help solve. Yeah. Do you think shows like that actually table for family businesses and families the thought of actually, we do need to be a bit harmonious, sort these problems out, and the legal conversations you have around that can be part of that picture?
We really need to avoid the kind of issues and disputes that would lead a family to sort of having those kind of divisions. And it's amazing with that family and with a number of ours how sometimes it can come down to a sorry, or it can come down to a very simple point of principle. And sometimes our role is actually just to bring people together around a table and say, look, what is it that we're all after together as part of this family? What is it we want to achieve? Now, it's not always that simple, unfortunately. And when things do really disintegrate in a family, it's sad to see, but there's always a way forward, and there's always a solution that can be had. There's always a compromise, and sometimes it is necessary to resort to the courts. But I really see our role as making that as painless as possible, and
finding the right solution.
Yeah, and otherwise it's really the cost and the stress of it that is the most problematic. So our role really is to avoid that happening by good structuring, and often you find these issues have arisen because it's just not been read properly, or it's not been looked at the time. No one's really paid heed to what happens if dad dies and we're left with this and there's another family on the scene. What happens if things fall apart between me and my brother? And we need to ask those questions, and sometimes they're uncomfortable, but they need to be asked sometimes to avoid the problems later.
Oh, interesting. And Anthony, looking forward, I know that you've got STEP Cayman coming up in January. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that? It sounded very exciting when we were
Yeah,
chatting
no,
earlier.
I'd be delighted to. So we have the STEP Cayman conference, which happens every year in January. So 17th to the 19th of January at the Ritz-Carlton in Grand Cayman. There is an absolutely packed agenda of really exciting presentations, a mix of educational events and proper networking events.
Where do delegates come from? I suppose from across the UK, North America?
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely. So based on what I'm seeing so far with our registrations and what we saw this year when the event happened, a mix of international guests, probably half local, half international, but a mix of New York, Miami, all across North America, Canada, the UK. Who wouldn't want to come to Cayman in January, right? So,
absolutely.
But the agenda is available right now on the STEP Cayman conference website. So really looking forward to seeing as many people as possible coming to Cayman in January for STEP Cayman.
And Rachel, finally, you'll be giving the welcome tomorrow at the Yale Club. What are you going to be saying to the audience there when you have the microphone to address the dinner?
I mean, really just to say how excited we are to be here again, and sponsoring an event like this is such a privilege. And it's so great to get people back together again. And we're still really enjoying that ability, and we're not taking it for granted anymore, are we?
No.
The ability to get together in a place. Outside our own jurisdictions, we're from small little islands coming to somewhere like Newcastle is so great. Yeah. And we've got brilliant people coming along, and just to say welcome to everybody, and we're going to have a great time.
Wonderful. Well, look, terrific to talk to you both, and we look forward to sharing this interview.
Thanks so much, David.
Thank you. Thanks, David.